So I would like to introduce someone who I actually think of as a friend these days. So Suzanne and I met properly for real life in person when I went over to the Netherlands last year and delivered a training day for all of the Dutch people, and some of them traveled hours to see me. That was a whole mind-blowing experience for me in itself, that people actually traveled to come and listen to me give some training on realist methods. But it was a fantastic day, and we had a really lovely day and a really lovely evening out in one of the Netherlands. Lovely restaurants, and I'm going to give a go at pronouncing the name of the city, but Suzanne's going to correct me because I know that I'm not going to say it properly. And actually, as I discovered afterwards, I spelt it about 5 different ways during the presentation, but each time I spelt it, I got a bit closer and eventually I got it right, but I didn't even realize I was spelling it wrong. So I was at Nijmegen. Does that sound anything close to how I should be pronouncing it, or do I still need some lessons? Getting there.
Almost perfect.
Almost. You'll make a Dutchman out of me yet then. So it was a fantastic day, and as a result of that, we've continued with some researches that we've been doing over there, and I'm involved with a couple of projects now, and I thought I would ask Suzanne to come and deliver a session for us to kick off 2026 with the research that she's been doing for a number of years, which is around mental health and workforce, really. And I'll let Suzanne properly introduce the topic to you, but I just wanted to try and introduce Suzanne. So Suzanne works for the Han University of Applied Sciences in Nijmegen, and she completed her bachelor's degree in occupational therapy and then a master's degree in public health. And she's been working in clinical practice as an occupational therapist and then in education as a lecturer in occupational therapy. Over the last years, she's worked as a social inclusion advisor and a researcher in various institutes in the Netherlands and in Eastern Africa. In 2023, she finished her PhD at Tilburg University, and that was called Supporting Employees with Common Mental Health Problems at Work, a Realist Approach. And her PhD and current research work focuses on innovative measures to promote the stay and return to work process. In this, she's conducted various realist studies, including synthesis and primary data interview studies and mixed methods evaluations as a tool for employers promoting mental health at work. That's a fantastic list of things that you've done. So, and not all of it we've spoken about. So we've spoken about some of these in detail, but not all of it. So I'm very interested to drill into more about what you've done and how you used your middle range theory. Now, I know from the PhD students that come to me for support, middle range theory often feels like how should we put it, a panacea that they can't achieve. They don't know how to get involved with it, how to select it and how to use it. So I'm very interested to see how you've approached it in your study, because like I always say, there's more than one way to do realist research, but listening to other people and how they do that, you can help everybody work out how you can go forward. So I'm going to kick it off over to you. I will let you know. So Susanna's already said she might have some connectivity problems. So if she starts to sound like a garbled robot, I will let her know, and we'll just take a pause while she switches from Wi-Fi over to mobile data. So I'll let you go.
Thank you very much, Jo. Assuming and seeing on my microphone that it works. And I am mostly working here at the university. So today I'm working from home. That sometimes gives some connectivity challenges. And nice that you are all here. Thank you for joining and listening. Just checking with Lauren, everyone. And Lauren, we can still see the slides, right? That's quite handy that I don't need to check it anymore.
Yeah, so I'll let you know if we can't, if you do a transition, it doesn't come through.
So I, as you can see, I'm gonna talk about how to stay at work with common mental health problems and how we used the capability approach as a middle range theory. And I thought to, besides Jo's perfect introduction, I really don't know how you did that, but probably I said some of the things that I did. Introducing myself in realist terms, I thought could be nice. As said already, I worked also in Eastern Africa, here in Rwanda on the motorbike. And in one of the photos, you see me carrying a big plant to my new house there. And the other picture, you see me carrying my boy. saying carrying something of the same weight with a completely different context, Rwanda versus the Netherlands. My resource in that process of carrying was learning how to keep balanced as I was doing my PhD, finishing my PhD in the first year of my boy, then keeping balanced on the back of the motorbike, with some of my reasoning like I will feel so relaxed once I reached out there or once I reached my place. And the outcome was, of course, hoping, and not always, but in general, quite a happy work and PhD life. My work life in a different context, Rwanda was really an amazing life experience. And somehow I considered my PhD years also as a totally different but nice life experience. And there I wanted to say a little bit about how I started this realist approach. But before I say that, I talk a lot, I think I'm gonna talk much using the word we, and often people say to me, always you say we, but who is we? So that's my team. I had one promoter, Roland Blonk, and two co-promoters, Shirley and Boween, who were supervising me throughout the PhD. And I did my PhD, to give you a little context, in 4 years, 4 days a week, normally paid job as a junior researcher. So there was a subsidy to get me subsidized for 4 years, and it was a paper-based thesis with 6 studies, of which 3 studies used realist approach. And as I already said to Lauren and Joe also, I will give you the references of my papers, but I decided to not include all the references that are cited in my paper that are regarding the methodology. So I will recommend you to open up the papers that I now present. And search for the actual references for the resources where I got the inspiration from on the methodology. They are literally written in the papers, so hopefully that will be sufficient for you. And here are the papers that you can use. Today's talk is, I would say, 50% realist and methodology, but also another half, 50% about content, I hope. And I hope it will also inspire you, whether you're doing a PhD at the moment or working as a postdoc. It gives you some more theory development about mental health, and it may concern also your own mental health. So take it as a researcher, but maybe you can take it also as a person. Because in general, I feel we need more sensitization about the importance of mental health, and especially the importance of the context and how that influences our well-being. But back to today, the aim of today's contribution is to provide insights in applying realist approach to middle range theory development. We did a I think, quite very large literature review. And I want to show you a bit more about how we use this explanatory framework, or developed an explanatory framework that was using a middle range program theory. The output of the studies can be found in 2 articles. We had one protocol study, that is the left one, and the results study, that is the right one. And in the end of my talk, I actually have a question, especially about the right one, the results paper, about the usability and the complexity of the study and how it can be used for future research. But I will pose that question towards the end. So if you want to use the resources, please scan it. This part of the study was finished a few years ago, but as I talked to Joe, we thought it could still be of relevant to get a bit of insight on the process, how I conducted this review study, and especially how to use this middle range theory. I assume so far so good. At the start of my PhD, I already did some more fragmented research work, in which I already did, I think, 2 or 3 other literature reviews. So I kind of said to my team, just summing up factors, I'm hoping to find actually a more challenging way to do a review, trying to not do another regular review. Then we agreed that I proposed Realist because I learned about it from some other colleagues that I knew from my previous job. And I also wanted to increase my methodological expertise besides the content of staying at work with mental health problems. So our team agreed. By that time, we didn't know how much time it would consume. That's quite good if you don't know it in advance. Then you just start and you go. And what we did, and I would really recommend everybody this in any Realist review, is to really define clear outcomes. We had 2 outcomes of interest. One is staying at work. Staying at work is kind of the opposite of prevention of absenteeism. So no absenteeism meant you stay at work. You are not absent, reported absent from work. And the other outcome was thriving at work. That is a bit of a popular term, but in research, in academic research, the outcome variable is often work performance or workability, or mostly work performance or workability. We operationalize those 2 outcomes quite strictly, but also not too much, because our review would give a lot of information what will be included or not. And then it's nice to know maybe that our study was about employees with common mental health problems. That's quite a generic term within research, so that was handy. But what was quite out of the box is that we included both diagnosed and self-reported. And as you can maybe see in the protocol paper, we were still thinking to only include people with common mental disorders. It's a detail, but it's quite an important thing to say that we changed our inclusion throughout the review. Because if we would only include diagnosis, so people with a disorder, they would already be diagnosed, so they would already be in the system in any kind of sick leave or physician assessing them on their occupational disease, or general practitioner having given a diagnosis, while our interest of our research was to prevent mental health problems. So that is in the phase before you get diagnosed or while you are struggling at work and you don't know yet. So the results paper, the second paper, shows that we broadened a little bit to common mental health problems. And why we did is because we wanted to develop our ultimate goal was to develop a practical guideline to inform employers about how to support employees with common mental health problems who are still at work. So many of the employees who are facing, for example, depression or signals of anxiety or signals of stress, they struggle but have not yet gone to any physician. So to keep it practical and broad enough to inform employers, we decided to include many studies. Then a little bit about the process that I will do step by step, because we had a 6 steps review. In the beginning, one of my things that I would find very important is start to consult with experts, especially to define your initial program theory. It was a very iterative process, although we did it systematically. It was an iterative process, especially, for example, what I said on the population. We changed that along the way. And we really wanted to contribute to this middle range program theory development. So we decided in this review to not review interventions or one intervention. So the outcome of the review would not be a program theory for one intervention, but it was more like a phenomenon that we wanted to study. And being informed and educated in a summer school, one summer school from Justin Jagosh, I found that this development of middle range program theory that is smaller than the middle range theory, but bigger than one intervention, would be suitable for this review to better understand how to stay at work. And the phenomenon was staying at work. So not the severity of problems or the severity of mental health diagnosis, or it was really a work participation, work outcome. Another thing that I learned that I want to give back to you, in line with also Jo, her tips to novel realist researchers, is navigate with the team. So it was very important that we all agreed on this realist methodology. We struggled a lot with the definition of realist terms. So this was really important to define terms before we would extract data and making like CMO configurations. And you can find, I think, quite clear definitions that we used in our publications. And this was also asked by reviewers. Reviewers also find very important to find back the way you define your terms, so they also know your way of thinking. And then, of course, the principles like ontological depth and this realist causation. And yeah, we really had to, of course, know these things, but you also learn it along the way. And another thing in our group was agree to disagree. So I think that's also another thing that could help a bit. But this is more in general. And I will move now towards the steps that we went through using a middle range theory. I just assume I continue, right? I'm not so used to these webinars to just keep talking, but I hope you're all fine.
Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah. So in the beginning, we had expert meetings, and we met also, of course, quite often along our team. And it was not only an initial like brainstorm literature review or like an orientation review, but it was especially the expertise of the research group that brought us to the idea of maybe the capability approach could fit. So what we did is, instead of a broad oriented, like a broad orientation in the literature, we took that capability model and we explored with a few studies that we found if this could fit in the type of studies that we were looking for. It was not like a definite decision, like we were not like it can only be capability model, but we were having that model in mind, and then two other models. One is a behavioral model prediction, a model of behavior prediction, and one other model was the International Classification of Functioning, which is not really, is more a way to frame things than an explanatory model, but we had a few varieties. But from the beginning, we checked if some articles that would pop up in a trial database search, that how they could fit in the capability approach. And then what we did is we drew an initial program theory that I will show in the next slides, based on an article of a colleague that was transferring this capability approach, that is a really broad theory, towards capability for work. So there was this middle range theory had already some kind of application towards work and work participation. And that helped for us to navigate or narrow it even more towards our phenomenon of work participation if you have a problem. That is, again, different than work for everybody, for all of us. So having a colleague, Jacques van der Klink, who already transferred this middle range theory towards our topic, yes, it helped. But our goal was to refine it even more towards our population of interest, people who are struggling at work with mental health. And I'm just giving a little basic about the capability approach. There's lots to read about it. It's a really interesting theory that originally comes from, I guess, India, but I'm not even 100% sure. that basically says, like, why are two people in the same context with the same level of poverty, for example, why is one person able to escape poverty and convert certain resources into capabilities into outcomes or functionings, and why is another person not able to achieve this, depending on their particular circumstances. And we all know these stories, right? That you you cannot really grasp it. Why some people who are grown up maybe in very disadvantaged life situations, they make it, depending on what the outcomes you are looking for. I don't say getting millionaire, but just sustain themselves in life, and others cannot. Maybe they are not able, but maybe they are also not enabled, as the capability approach says. So to the three small bullet points that I point here, capabilities are seen as functioning that the person is able to achieve depending on his or her particular circumstances. So we already liked this a lot because in our research group, having a sociologist, a psychologist, we knew already that whether you stay at work or not depends much on your circumstances, not on your inner motivation only, or in the severity of your problems. It depends on the context. And then the capability approach also says, like, how work outcomes, such as staying at work, may be understood could be by how a person converts resources into these capabilities. And those are based on your values and choices, but also on your circumstances. So that gives a very broad framework to get all our findings into different aspects, like circumstances, values, choices, resources. That helps you to organize your data also and better understand what is really going on. And our hypothesis was that employees with mental health problems, they can realize to stay at work either by being able in their own resources or being enabled. So their employer enables them or their partner enables them to stay at work. So that is a little bit more about the capability approach. I would say it's a very interesting theory in general. It's also quite philosophical, there's a lot of wisdom with it, I think. And what I like about it is that it's not all about the person who is responsible for failure, because, yeah, I will show also, yeah, the one who translated the capability approach into the work context is Van der Klink. I have the reference also here. Yeah, so what do you value, and how can you realize those values by a supporting work context? I hope that is enough about this. Finishing with our assumption that some contextual factors enable individuals to stay and perform well at work, that trigger certain mechanisms to promote work participation. And we were particularly in this review interested in those mechanisms because we already have plenty of reviews about not staying at work, but not being absent, that are summing up factors. But we found that just summing up factors is not enough to grasp the complexity of the problem. And also it's not enough to really change it into a practical tool, because we really wanted a review that helped us to develop a practical tool also for employers. So our initial program theory looked like this. On my smaller screen where I look to the camera, I can also not read all of it. I will just say in general that the upper layer is all macro, meso, micro level context. So those are all different values, those contextual factors that we figured out with experts that we may find in the review, in the articles. And then the upper layer, as Van der Klink also put in his model, are work inputs, work factors, work conversion factors. And the lower is personal factors, and they together lead to a set of capabilities. And the word capability, the best way is to kind of see it as a as a strength or a value, or capability is so difficult to explain that word. But a set of like values or things that in the end can help you to choose, do I do this or do I leave it? And in this theory, it gives the idea that there's a moment of choice. I'm a bit doubtful about it, but we wanted to explore if people in the articles talk about that choice leading to work participation. So as you can see, this initial program theory, it's based on a middle range theory, but we already filled it in a little bit for what we thought that could be happening for people with mental health problems who were still at work. This was through a brainstorm with experts, and I guess a little bit of orientation literature review, but not yet the systematic review. Then I go to two small, bit like boring literature review steps, the systematic search, the search string, etc. You can read all of this in the paper, so I'm not going to say much about it. We just decided throughout the process, first we wanted to do like gray literature, and we wanted to have everything. And then suddenly, we thought, no, let's keep it traditional, systematic research, or systematic search, double screening of everything, and just keep it quite straightforward. Then we had full text screening and appraisal of studies. We did have quite a lot of studies, so and we also saw a really huge variety in quality. So we decided to use the MMAT, mixed methods appraisal tool, it's called, but references are again in my papers, saying that the ones we categorized as high quality were used to define the first CMO configurations. The ones with medium quality were there to support the CMO configurations, and the low ones were excluded. And that was in the end, I believe, 1 or 2 out of 61. So this tool has quite a large inclusion, I would say. Now, this was about how many hits? I don't even remember it. I think full text 191. I don't know for all of you if that is much or not, but to me it was really a huge job. And then I thought, as a little intermezzo, how to keep it fun. Keep running. That was my method to stay strong. And I said, Joe, that I would say something about the Blue Monday. We did a Blue Monday run yesterday with a nice charity goal for mental health. And we were collecting some euros to invest more into sharing experience of people with lived experiences of mental health problems. But throughout this review, it was really a tough process reading all these articles, and a little intermezzo to motivate everybody to keep active in whatever way. Now I go a bit more to the technical part. As I said, the systematic search and everything was quite straightforward. Now the realist part comes in here, I think. Of every study, we decided to define at least one, or we could define at least one CMO configuration. If there was in the study only like context, for example, women or gender, men and women fall sick more easily than men. I'm just giving an example. And there was any information about mechanisms, then we decided to not include the study. So we really wanted to have mechanisms in the study to include it in the review. And we had set that criteria, or there needs to be a causal link between context, mechanisms, and outcome. But that also involved that we allowed ourselves to include more information than just the primary data in the results section. So if there were relevant and logic arguments mentioned in methods or discussion, especially in the discussion section, we decided to include it. We were very transparent about this. We also highlighted it where it was coming from the discussion. So we thought, okay, if in Realist Review one of the core values is this transparency, we are safe. And it was actually quite well received by the reviewers also. Then what we did with all these CMO configurations, because you can imagine from 61 studies with 2 outcomes of interest, there were quite many CMO configurations. We put all of them in an Excel file. I would actually recommend that because we had separate files from every data extraction form for every study. But to put them all in Excel gave us an opportunity to order the studies based on outcome and based on type of study. And then we had from the 61 articles, 53 articles that were, oh no, how was it again? 50. Some articles were describing both outcomes and others were having one outcome. But because we included both, some reviewers said, why don't you split the study and give give one separate paper for stay at work and one separate paper for work performance. But because we wanted to integrate this into one middle range program theory, giving us tools for employers, we decided to keep it all together. If I would do it again, I might have split it. But in that time, I was just not ready to write another paper. So sometimes you have to be pragmatic. And I want to show one example of how we did this CMO configuration. Or I have actually 2 examples I see. One study, Finnish male workers with stress and mood problems were undergoing a group sessions and participation to intervention, where mechanisms were resources were receiving personal feedback, and a response or reasoning were to experience decreased depressive symptoms, leading to a positive effect on workability. So on the data extraction form, this was kind of the setup, like context, micro, meso, macro, but I didn't type it here, the mechanisms and the outcome. And every like mini table from each study with those CMO configurations, we added all together to one Excel file. This was still without having that mid-range theory of the capability approach in mind. We were just doing data extraction using the Realist methodology, but we already decided to distinguish this thing of resources and reasoning, and I found that really helpful. I just give one more example. That is about high workload. So there's much more in the context of that study, but there's a high workload that was experienced by employees. One of the resources was mistrust that they experienced. That increased actually, was increased by that high workload. Experiencing mistrust would lead to, I don't want to justify to my manager, leading to the time people would more easily say, I'm calling sick. So you can see here sick leave as an outcome, and in the previous one, workability or work performance as an outcome. And you get lots of variety in the type of mechanisms. Those were related to indeed trust or work relations, to social support, to job characteristics, how heavy, how much stress do you experience. That there's much going on when people with mental health problems are continuing working, because lots of different factors together make that you will call sick or not. I saw one question coming in, but I hope it's okay to continue. In the analysis, what we decided to do based on that Excel file is we explored patterns in these CMO configurations by thematic analysis. And those patterns that we saw, they led to middle range program theories, of which I will show one example now. And we said if it's one CMO configuration from one study that is somehow similar or in line with a CMO configuration from one other included study, they together can lead to like at least a middle range program theory or part of it. So we were not extremely strict, I think, but of course, I'm very happy to hear how you look at it and to learn from you. What we did is I'll just, I can show it the best. I'm skipping a bit because I see the order of my slides is a bit confusing. What we did, we used storytelling, this thematic analysis, with putting all these CMO configurations together. And you don't need to read this, but I just want you to see, like on the right column, where you see CMO, where you see facilitates and barriers based on study-specific CMO configurations. We were putting down all the CMO configurations together. And then as we moved towards the left, we were calling them more general CMO configurations. And the summary of these general CMO configurations lead to the middle range program theory that is on top. Sorry, I couldn't put it on one page, but and this is all in the supplementary file of our study, of our publication of the results. And what I liked about it is that on the right column where you see facilitators and barriers, there were a lot of directions of our outcomes. Some people would feel with more job demands, they would feel more stressed, and others said, yeah, but we need some level of performance outcomes to keep going. And there were so many directions that this tool to put barriers and facilitators helped. But in the end, we wanted to write it towards one direction. Otherwise, you get completely crazy in the formulation of your middle range program theory. So we use that step in between that you see under DEMI regularities, and those were general CMO configurations. I still don't know if this was the best way to do it, but at least it was a very transparent way to do it. And to explain every time again in your next level of your analysis, what are the references and your thinking behind the studies that you used. Because we didn't want people who see their study included in our review to say like, hey, they turned the outcome. For example, we do about staying at work, and that person had a study about prevention of absenteeism. Yeah, we converted that. But we were transparent, and that was also one of our limitations. That it's very complex how to bring together and synthesize all these different ways of presenting data. Then the middle range program theory, I'm going to give one example, is more like a short story writing, the way I see it, where you summarize the real mechanisms, what it's about. And I'll give one example. I thought to do it about social support. The numbers in brackets are the included studies that can be found in our publication. Adequate and timely social support and supportive relationships from colleagues, but particularly supervisors who are willing to assist and listen to work-related problems, increase the chance to stay at work among employees with mental health problems, because this helps to obtain a manageable workload. Facilitation by either a mental health professional or a job retention specialist who, 3 points, acts independently, provides an expert insight or expert advice, and is familiar to the workplace, also improves the likelihood to stay at work. There we put the characteristics of this facilitator or mental health professional, but we couldn't find real explanations about their behavior. But because it was so related to feeling supported, we still decided to include it. And in the end of the literature review, we had 7 of these statements on how can you stay at work, or how and what helps you under what circumstances to stay at work. And yeah, you can see already in this framing, this was one of the easiest, that is quite a lot of information. And I think we all deal with that as realist researchers. It's always a lot of information that you want to put in your program theory. Just seeing if I want to... No, the story writing, that helped me a lot. Reading the story across similar mechanisms, keep it sorted on outcome. That was one of my anchor points. The outcome had to be similar. And then I would move into mechanisms, context. Yeah, it was, I valued a lot that 2 courses that I had that helped me to do all this summarizing or this story writing. And I found it also helpful in this frame that you see in my large Word file, is how you move from all the citations to these general CMO configurations, again to the middle range program theory. Now, that was one of my goals, to share with you how we did that. And the other goal is, of course, to show how we use this capability for work model. Because in this phase here, we decided per topic, not yet, to also write this according to the capability for work model, because then you would get 7 different models. We used the middle range theory really as an overall reflecting framework, so not to structure our data. And that looks like this. It can be quite full, but I will go through with you. Final stage of synthesis, we developed, yeah, I already said this. We developed the explanatory framework using the initial program theory. So we had in the end 7 middle range program theories that you see here in the right top. And we had a very theoretical exercise together with the experts in our advisory board, people with lived and problems with lived mental health problems, and ourselves as researchers, where we asked to them those 7 middle range program theories. Can we frame that into certain capabilities or into certain values or resources, and how does that work? And what we did is we used the stories of these 7 middle range program theories, and we tried to frame it in this capability framework. One very wise lesson that I learned from my promoter, who works closely to Jacques van der Klink, is that what is for one person a resource is for the other person a circumstance that he needs to deal with, and for the other it's, for example, an outcome. So in such frameworks, it never works the same for everybody. And that's fine. And what I wish to share with you is I want to highlight a few things. Is you see the numbers there that I highlighted around the second circle, that is number 2 and 3. Those work inputs, work resources, they refer in our study mostly to social support and your job characteristics. So thinking about, why am I not feeling well? we give a framework that helps people, and especially professionals, to reflect with you how are your circumstances, both at work and your personal circumstances, of course. And this gives a framework for people to give indicators to be very alert about. Because if you have no work-related social support, that you can ask with a very simple question to your employee, like, do you have someone at work who you feel friends with? Are you feeling support from your colleagues? Do you experience meaningful relationships? Of course, workload is a very big issue. But these factors give a very clear input, to what you can ask about in the tool that we wanted to develop. So as you can see in this capability approach theory, we bring together lots of factors that are somehow related to each other. And with the titles that you see, it's the circumstances, what works, how it works, and lastly, the choice that we were most curious about. The capability approach says that even with all the same resources and capabilities, you choose to use it or not. On that, we didn't find any articles. So that decision in the morning that we all know, probably because we have sometimes that decision to make, like, am I too sick? Am I sick and I can't go to work, or I go? That is a really small, minimal decision moment. On that, we didn't find, unfortunately, evidence. But we do find it, because this model says so clearly that choice of what you do with the things that are going on is of impact. We do recommend this, of course, to unravel a bit deeper. I'm just trusting that so far it's possible to follow me. And now I want to give a few more content findings, also to inspire you a little bit towards your own mental health and work. Is, as I said, work participation can be promoted, especially with a nice organizational climate and good leadership. As I said, social support is extremely important in what way, in one way or the other. Having at least one person you feel comfortable with. The perception of the job characteristics. So your supervisors can say you're not having a high workload, but the way you perceive it is what actually matters. Of course, coping styles when having mental health problems. And one beautiful comment of one of our co-researchers who also faces mental health problems was that in the end, maybe people who had gone through real suffering, they are actually your most wise colleagues, because their coping styles from previous experiences can actually really strengthen even an entire team to be vulnerable, to feel strong, and to be yourself. So coping styles, especially from previous life experiences, is important. Then, of course, the health systems and the severity of your problems is an indicator for chances to stay at work. And then personal characteristics, as well as features of interventions. We decided to not sum up interventions, but we just described some features of interventions that you can find in our results paper. Then for almost the last part on this is the last slide on the outcome and our methodological reflection before I start with the reflections on our study. And it could also give you a little inspiration, hopefully. Like, how can you stay at work? In a very simple way, we tried to define this set of capabilities. That I said capability is that word that is so difficult to define, but it's not about your personal characteristics. It's not about your gender, on your life experience. It's not about only the workload, but the actual moment that you decide, can I stay at work or not, seems to be driven by those 5 points, A to E: having meaningful relations and support at work, a sense of exerting a control in your work, being able to evaluate and adjust your workload. So it's not about the workload itself, but it's about that adjustability. And freedom in the next point, D, freedom to create opportunities, either to change your workload, but also for active coping. So that is, for example, one very important finding we had is you can learn lots of things about your with your psychologist about your mental health and your coping, but if you not create opportunities at work to practice, like saying no, setting boundaries, suggesting, taking small suggestions while you don't know how it will be perceived by your managers, there needs to be a place at work where you can create those opportunities. And then, of course, the last one is experiencing a better health that increases your cognitive functioning and your work performance, and that subsequently increases also your chance to stay at work. Because if we feel better, of course, there is a higher chance that we stay at work. And that was also one of the ripple effects. We saw a few, but one of the ripple effects was that this severity of symptoms was an outcome on, I haven't written it correctly, sorry here, but the severity of outcome, the severity of your symptoms, how depressed you are, for example, it has an impact on work performance, and your work performance itself has then again an impact on the chance to stay at work. But we explain a few of those ripple effects in our paper also. So that is maybe quite a lot to digest. And yeah, that's maybe also one of my first reflections. We can see, looking to Joe also, what I have remaining is a few methodological reflections and, of course, questions from the group. But I also have 1 or 2 slides remaining on how those review insights were translated into our tool. And you can see our tool if you like, about how to stay at work and how managers can help you to stay at work. So I will first do the methodological reflections that we had ourselves. The first one is, we thought it's a large contribution to theory development. It was published, especially the results article, in our field of occupational health. The link that you probably, hopefully opened about our paper in the Scandinavian Journal of Work, Environment and Health is highest impact journal. It's really a high impact journal. And yet we have few citations. And we are thinking, is this review too large, or is it too complex, or is general researchers, general population of mental health and work is not yet ready for this type of approaches to explain work participation? So we are kind of surprised, because we thought, yeah, this is a next step in our understanding of the phenomenon of work participation and staying at work, but citations are staying out. It's not that I'm rewarded by citations. I don't really care for numbers. Actually, I really don't care. But of course, I wish other people to use our work. That's why we do it. Partly, and we do it for practice. But for practice, we developed really well-received tools. So for that, we are very, very satisfied. And bridging to that, having this literature review in this realist way with the capability approach, it gives us quite practical implications, because the large figure that you saw here, that I depicted here, this gives a very easy starting point to develop an intervention, because you know some of the things you can work on, some of the things like severity of problems. In the workforce, you cannot work as a health professional decreasing or increasing someone's symptoms. but the actual framework helped us a lot to develop practical tools. We had lots of circumstances, lots of mechanisms that provided the input. So that was a really good point. And as I said already, it took an enormously amount of time. I think double of a regular, I call regular, maybe I don't say it correctly, but a standard systematic review. A challenge was the variety, heterogeneity of the type in the type of studies, and that dilemma on how do we deal with the other side of the coin of staying at work, because staying at work is a positive outcome, but most articles write about the negative outcome. And another challenge was how to use information in the methods and discussion section. So that is so far on the literature review and how we used this middle range theory of the capability approach. And as I said, I could also show you the tool that was developed based on this review, including focus groups, interview studies, and an intervention mapping study. So Jo, what shall we do?
Well, we've got, oh, I've just lost you. Are you there still? Yes. Sorry, I don't know
I
what
hear
happened
you.
there. I lost everything. Right, yeah. So we've got half an hour left. So if you want to do sort of a quick whistle-stop tour of that, and then if we show the slides, people can read them and slow that down in the recording, should they wish. And then we've got time for questions. We've only got one question so far in the chat. So if anyone else has any more questions, please, yeah, put them in the chat. I know a couple of people have already had to head off because they've got meetings, which obviously started at past. So, yeah.
Then what I will do, I will indeed show it, but also very brief, and that we leave enough room for discussion. Yes?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. As I said, the tool, I can give 1,000 names. I mean, of course, we did all of this in Dutch, so, but I just said the tool. How we got to this is, as I said, a literature review, focus groups, interviews, and an intervention mapping study. All the references are in the PowerPoint, so you can use it. And if you like to see our website, where you can download our tool, you can use the QR code here. And I want to bridge especially to the relation between the review results and the content of the tool. That I can show the best here. Social support was one of our outcomes that is also important for supervisors that we included in tool number 5, ask for support. When you see someone, when you see a risk of sick leave. The job characteristics and especially the ability to modify your workload, to modify things is completely incorporated into tool number 4, find work accommodations to stay at work. What else? I don't see it. Oh, sorry, my connection was a bit slow. Coping styles are much about encouraging autonomy and responsibility. So that was another intervention, a part of the review that we included in the intervention. And then we added also, it's the part of organizational climate that in Dutch is called strengthen your team and organization. And we also included the part of personal context that we translated to supervisors into know your employees. Sorry that I put here the Dutch picture of the website, but we have it all in English in a PDF file. Know your employee well, because we saw in our review that knowing someone's personal context, what the person likes, his interests, also life experience or personal situation. Are you married, divorced, caregiver for parents, for example? That seems incredibly important as a protection to provide the right support. And another part of the review about features of interventions, we incorporated into some suggested interventions that supervisors can think about when it comes to offering interventions to employees with mental health problems. So just going back to this part, this was the core part of our tool that has 5 parts that goes for supervisors to learn how to recognize risks and changing behavior of employees, to talk to employees, with employees about the impact, don't talk about causes or severity of mental health problems, but talk about the impact at work. That's what your conversation also for you with your supervisor should be about, not about your deepest troubles and for him or her to solve it. Then encourage autonomy and responsibility is important. Find together work accommodations to stay at work, and we encourage supervisors to also ask for support when someone is at risk of sick leave. So that's so far, and in case you like it, you can also do some further reading. Our third study was a mixed methods realist evaluation. I'm not going into detail about it, but I just want to show you how in this causality we try to explain with enabling circumstances on top resources and reasonings, like how supervisors can help to get meaningful outcomes for supervisors in the way they increase their supportive behavior. So our intervention was not on employees, as I quickly say. Our intervention was focused on supervisors, and they increased supportive behavior. So that was a good thing. But we wanted not only to know whether they increased it or not, but we wanted to know how to increase this. And that is here in this figure explained. But I will keep it to that. And that's also enough, I think, for now. Let me go back. Yeah, I think for the ones who still like to see our tool, you can screen it here on this QR again. Guideline tool, how to call it, and then maybe I will change slides again regarding the question that comes up from you, from the audience.
I think that's it then. I think we're done. Are you finished?
For me, it is, but I'm happy to receive reflections.
No, thank you. Thank you for speeding up towards the end. So we've still got just about 20 minutes left to enter into some discussions with some people. And whilst I get people to put things into the chat, yeah. So Hannah's saying she's got to go. Thank you very much for a great presentation. It's her first Realist Hub seminar. Oh, we didn't realise we had any new Realist Hub people. So you can put your names in the chat. We are a friendly bunch here. And there's lots of Realist Hub seminars on the Realist Hub YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch them. And there's some really useful pearls of wisdom in all of them. So one of the things, whilst people are thinking about any questions that they have, I wanted to pick up on mid-range theory. So to have a think about that before we get into it. So please put your questions in the chat, and I can see people are putting, what do you call it? Reactions now on the screen. If anyone's feeling brave enough, I do like to do a proper, clapping and thanking as if we were in a lecture hall. So those of you that are brave, put your cameras on. Let's hear some noise and not just see the screens. So we'd like to thank Suzanne for her presentation and to kick off 2026 from the Realist Hub. Thanks, Alejandro, for sticking your camera on. You know where your friends are? And everyone else is just hiding behind the screen. But thank you very much for that, Suzanne. It was really, really interesting. And I did wonder more than once, yeah, do you know what? We've had some people get some funny looks in a public space, Sylvie. It actually, like Suzanne said, hands up, but it can actually promote some interesting conversations with colleagues. So I wondered, and if anyone's feeling brave enough, I wondered how many people looked at this, not necessarily through the methodological lens, which I'm going to come back to around mid-range theory, but more through the PhD postdoc experience. Because I
And
actually
mental
think,
health.
yeah, there's a lot of overlap between mental health, or how shall we call it, stability of mental health or continuing mental health whilst undertaking a PhD. And it is a really challenging space to be in. One of the things I can say, and I'm sure, Suzanne, you'll have your own reflections on this as well, but you have, when you start the PhD, I describe it the millstone around your neck, the weight, the guilt, the enormity of the PhD from day one sits there. And for me, when I pressed submit, that just disappeared. It was even before the Viper. So those are people who are struggling currently in the whole PhD slog and that long road to submission. It does get easier. Suzanne, what's your reflection on that process? I mean, doing a realist PhD is an undertaking in itself.
Yeah, of course, I had often this, how do you say that? That it's kind of ironic to study things that you experience also.
Yeah.
But I feel in general blessed in my life, but I also feel blessed that in despite the circumstances, I haven't suffered from like really mental health problems that affected my functioning.
Yeah.
And I was able, especially in the second year of my PhD, when I had some personal questions combined with loneliness in the PhD and this review, loneliness and the review,
Yeah.
I did have the opportunity to put it down for a while. We had to do a rerun of the citation of the database search anyway, and we had done an interview study. So I was able to swap my tasks for 1 or 2 months, and that was saving my, our organization complete, not the full organization practices what we preach, but my supervisors practices what we preach.
That's really good. I
So
mean, you
that's,
like me, you were doing this in and around the COVID time as well. So it's
yeah,
a
it was
tricky space.
the second and third year was COVID, post-COVID. But and of course, having 1 or 2 colleagues that you get along with well, I think that is
Yeah.
one of the most important things. And of course, a supervisor who is maybe not your best friend, but with whom you can discuss the impact of work. I think that is one of our main contributions. Like it's about the impacts at work and not your severity of the problems.
Yeah. So I
Because
think
some
that's
people
really
are
important to take
extremely,
forward, isn't
extremely
it?
depressed and they still keep working well and the work keeps them going.
So I'm going to park the mental health bit for that particular moment and just focus on a couple of methodological points before we dive into the questions that have come up from the group. So I picked up on a couple of things as you were talking, and one of them was around how you approached defining your outcomes early on. So it's a process that I call refining the scope of the review. So quite often when PhD students come to me for training, they intend to do the realist review on the entirety of their PhD, and it's too big. And then we have to work out how we can reduce the scope of the PhD into something manageable. And one way you can do that is to refine those outcomes. And I just wondered if you were to do the study again, knowing what you know now, would you go through that same process? Because obviously outcomes for you were tricky if they were being reported negatively, but understandably you wanted to create a positively framed program theory so that it was helpful. Sometimes it's not always helpful to just keep saying how awful everything is when you're not providing people with anything that can help instigate change, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one thing I would do differently is to divide it into two. To have
So you
stay at
would take
work or
the comments,
prevention
yeah, the
of
review comments, yeah.
absenteeism, because work performance, and then we also have, for the ones who know about it, presenteeism is that you are at work but you're actually sick.
Yeah.
We could have dived
Yeah.
more into the complexity of these outcomes already itself. So I would do
Yeah.
that again, I think.
So I think that if we translate that outside of Suzanne's study for the PhD students out there, it's think carefully about the parameters that you're trying to cover within your realist review. And if you are trying to be too inclusive and include everything, it actually can create headaches for you at the other end, both with analysis and then with write-up, because you have too many things that you're trying to report on. And that can either mean that you can get feedback like Suzanne got in the peer review, or as I have experienced, um, you find it very tricky to pull it all together into one paper because you don't have the explanatory depth to be able to get that across in a very small word limit. And we have the other problem actually that we have just got, which is we have got 2 papers. So we did split our data, and now we're having problems getting them submitted so that they can be sort of viewed as linked papers, if that makes sense. So there are challenges, I think, to all of this approach, and there are certainly challenges in getting realist stuff published as well, depending on where you go. Right, okay, so what was middle? I was around mid-range theory. So again, this is thinking broadly, and again, for the people in the PhD space who, or maybe even the postdoc space who are attempting to use mid-range theory. So Suzanne made 2 distinctions there, which is the substantive theory and also the mid-range program theory. And they are not to be confused because they're separately, but I'm specifically talking about substantive theory. So like me in my PhD, you used mid-range substantive theory, so your capability approach, to help you organize, coordinate, give you an overview of the data. And you found that in an a priori way. So you find it before you started to do the review, which is exactly the process that I took. And it's one way of using mid-range theory. I've also done the opposite, which is go and find mid-range theory post hoc to help explain results as well. So I wondered if you felt that the capability approach, looking back now, was that the right one? Or since you've obviously learned more since you did that, would you choose to use a different framework?
Yeah, I did think afterwards that self-determination theory would have fit the data really well. But that distinction of like that for some person, one thing is a resource and for the others, it's a capability, and for the other, it's like a context. For example, talking about colleagues, some people get drained by working with others, and others, they take it as energizer. So how the framework works on an individual level, I find that really a beautiful characteristic of this middle range theory. But if I would do the thematic analysis on that big unmanageable sheets that I showed you with the individual CMO configurations, then general, these DAME irregularities and all these vague things that I found really difficult to capture, then I would go through it with different theories. I may have chosen another one. So I wouldn't say you need to choose a mid-range theory beforehand. And in my evaluation studies, I used theories to indeed explain the mechanisms rather than the whole phenomenon. So I would use mid-range theories to explain one. For example, collective efficacy was one thing that we found in our intervention among supervisors. It's something I never really heard about, but it was reported. And then I started to dive into it.
I hope that's helpful for people in the audience. Put your thumbs up if it is, or if you're confused, I don't know, put something else up. I don't know, is there an angry face in the reaction? But I think one of the things that would be useful for people to understand is there are different ways to use substantive theory. And you can approach it in a variety of formats, but as long as you're transparent, that is the main thing in how you use it. So let's go back to the questions that we've had come through. And the first one is from, now you're going to tax me here. Jibreen, right, come on, you're going to have to come on and teach me how to pronounce your name. I seem to have spend a lot of my time trying to learn how to pronounce people's names, or as I've discovered, place names. So I will get there eventually. Help me out.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you for inviting me. So it's pronounced Jibreen.
Jibreen. Oh, I was not too bad. That's quite good going for me. Sometimes I really make a complete mess. So you've logged in from Morocco, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Absolutely gorgeous part of the world. So you're, I'm guessing you're quite new to realist research, and your question is around the initial program theory, and it's around confirming and refining and refuting it. So Suzanne, over to you. What advice can you give Jibreen around confirming and refining and refuting your IPT based on your review data?
And to us, it was because the IPT, I can show it again or go back to the slides, but it was really like general factors like personal factors or workload or coping. These more general terms that later on deemed relevant based on the studies that reported about this, and our ultimate refined program theory, or refined, we said it was more a framework because we already had the middle range program theories. It was a refinement of it. And what I noticed that I found challenging, that I did also lots of interviews and focus groups in the meantime with concept mapping and lots of other different methodologies, that it was in analyzing this, it was very difficult to stay close to the data. Because if you really looked at what other researchers written as secondary data, it was not so deep, to be honest. So we really extracted everything that was possible from every study. And so it is refined, but it didn't really change much. And if I would not have had the initial program theory using the capability approach, it could have turned another direction, I think. But it's refined, not tested, the way I experience it.
Yeah, I'd say that most of the results from our review, I mean, well, when we did our review, we took an IPT, we refined it using the evidence from the literature, and then in the valuation, we couldn't test that IPT because the intervention wasn't actually being delivered in healthcare. So if the context that stopped, because things are exactly
completely different.
Yeah. So
and that was the same for us because
not Jabreen, but you say on at the end if you've got a specific question about your own study.
No, I'm asking because right now I'm working on a realist review regarding the relation between the financial incentives and the motivation. So I'm struggling about how to refine or refute or confine the initial program theory of this review. It is why I'm asking to get some kind of insight from Suzanne. So thank you. It was so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, my ultimate advice would be, if your initial program theory has more description of how you think it works, but not yet a theory, then search also for theories on the level of mechanisms. So, for example, motivation has of course lots of middle range theory, and rewards or incentives, there are many synonyms for that. Also, it has I think it's a world on its own, like even from perspective of marketing or any other I would use a very multidisciplinary approach towards the selection of middle range theories.
Yeah, so great. There's a lot out there on motivational theory. So we're going to move on, and the next one on the list is Sylvie. Sylvie, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. And would you like to ask us on your question? So it's about insights on the tools received. It's interesting. It's a good question.
I just have some background noise, so I hope you don't mind. The question is, how are the tools received? And related to that question is, who are using the tools? Are they employers, employees, maybe intermediaries? So just thinking about the practical relevance of the insights and the translation to the tools. How do you make a good translation? That's the question.
Yeah.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, the complexity of my whole project was that we started with this review on a very broad explanation on how people can stay at work and like as employees, and our intervention was gonna be on the supervisors. So we didn't extract data from the included articles only about the role of supervisors. So that's on another level. So that's already like a step. Yeah. Whereas part of the review we used for our tools, as I already showed in the tool, but talking about our method, our novel approach in the end, yeah, it was well received. We had almost 100 supervisors using the digital guideline, and they were coached by intermediates, and the intermediaries were occupational health professionals. And back to my own reflection, our review was too massive with two outcomes that in the review and in the current literature, they are considered as two separate things. And we wanted to integrate it into work participation, into a broader look at a broader view on prevention. Because if you keep looking at only the negative outcomes, you don't move away from this prevention, or you don't move away from this, all the things that you don't want. We wanted to put it a bit broader. And for that, our ultimate tools and everything was received well, but the review itself, I think, was too much to grasp on how people in general can stay at work. And it incorporated many different program theories, as I showed. It's not one deep program theory. And the one we had about supervisory support, we used to develop our guideline, of course. I hope that's a question to your answer to your question.
Yes, absolutely. It raises the second question, that it's intriguing why that it's so difficult for people to grasp the big overview umbrella of what you're trying to do. Intriguing,
yeah, but as a realist reviewer, most people don't understand you. I noticed this already.
So we need to figure out how to do so.
Yeah,
That's then the question.
Indeed. Yeah, it's mostly about these underlying mechanisms that are difficult to mention or to grasp. And I find wording also a big challenge, both in the review and in the next studies, because wording is crucial for how you point out your message.
I would add to that as well with our research. One of the biggest things that's helped our research get taken up, get cited, get used is actually that next stage on. So joining advisory groups, joining other people's groups, making people who are writing guidelines know that you exist. It's this getting the paper out there is just one part of that next process. And I think for us, the biggest thing's been both myself and my old boss Ian is just getting ourselves on different projects, different groups, different panels, and then your work then is moved on, if that makes sense. And you then need to learn how to articulate your findings in a non-realist way, and you get better at doing that with practice, I would say, as well.
Yeah, for non-academic papers.
Why is it so important?
Yeah, especially for the outcome for the end users, not as an academic paper as this one.
So Claire Pentecost has got the next question, and I know we're running out of time. So Suzanne, if you have to go, I'm happy to stay on. But what I wanted to say before people dash off, this is a question that I think is really interesting, and I'll tell you a little bit about my journey into the whole mid-range theory when we start. If you can put into the chat how you identified the mid-range theory that you are either using to organize your data, your analysis, or maybe you used it to help inform your IPT, or perhaps you're using it to help explain your findings. If you can put into the chat so that Claire can see the variety of ways in which people can identify mid-range theory, then we can come on and talk about that. But when I was doing my PhD, I'd heard a lot, and there wasn't so much realist research published at the time, so it was actually quite tricky, and I really struggled with the whole idea of mid-range theory. And I naively thought at the end I would have a mid-range theory that would explain every single one of my findings. And to say I made this my quest for months, I spoke to senior sociological professors, I spoke to healthcare people who were real big experts in stroke and in service delivery and organisation. And one of the things I began to realise is that it's unlikely, and this took many months, it is unlikely that you will find a mid-range theory that will actually explain all of your data. You are likely to find mid-range theories that will explain in some of your data. I was convinced there was a theory out there that would explain everything. And I spent far too many hours on that. Now I found mine separately. I found a lot of mine through papers. So as I'm coding in a review, if someone's mentioned a theory, I code it, theory, and it goes into a bucket of theory, and I revisit that later. So that's one way I find Sometimes we work with people on projects. They know the theories, so they tell us about them. And I'm sure that was the same for you, Suzanne, because your promoter Ronald
Yeah,
had already worked.
the promoters, and also because I had quite some research experience, non-PhD related, so it's a combination, I think. But the challenge is mainly to ask further for the experts who find the things that they say very normal or like common sense, then to ask further, like where is this thinking coming from? It's based on what? Can I read more about it? More like that. It's my talk much to people and ask deeper.
One of the things I've tried recently is AI. It's been all right. So I give AI my outputs and I say, can you help me identify relevant substantive theory that could help offer some greater explanation for these findings? Not everything it produces is relevant. So that's up to you then to go away and look at it. But I've certainly found a few things that I thought, oh, that's an interesting way. It's an interesting way of looking at that. So that's another way you can use it. I wouldn't use AI for writing, and I certainly wouldn't use AI to construct CMOs. I tried that for a course I gave last year. It was dreadful, absolutely dreadful. But it can be useful, I think, sometimes as a critical friend in some places. If you ask it, you have to ask it to critique you. But in terms of helping identify things that you haven't thought of, then that's something that you can look at. I don't know if you've got anything else to mention. Have you tried using AI, Suzanne, in this context?
With AI? Sorry, I was distracted because I was texting for the babysitter. No, I haven't used much, and I'm quite old-fashioned. But like Marie-Louise, who is here in the group, we yesterday in the office were still saying like we need to ask so much more. Just general recruitment text, and even mid-range theory. There's so much out there, but of course it needs that really critical view. So, and it's on paper writing, I will be very careful. I had a few colleagues who had papers rejected because they said, we think it's AI generated, which was really not true. So there's also like a controversial side that people think already that you're not sincere. And that, of course, because AI is so strong, they can cross-check it, and then it's already 1-0 behind. You are already one step behind, So yeah, I am a bit old-fashioned. I just did handwork, everything, and that time it was also not yet common. Of course.
Yeah, so AI
is 4 years ago that we had the final publication, or 4 or 3, no, 3.5. So that was not yet.
So nobody else has put anything in the chat around how they identified mid-range theory. So Claire, hopefully that's like a step in the right direction. Like I said, if you're looking for it to explain the findings a bit like Suzanne had done, explain the mechanisms, then you're likely to lean into substantive theory around a particular mechanism. And I just thought there would be some grand theory that would explain like my whole PhD. That doesn't
really
exist.
Useful to think about what you see the middle range theory is doing for you.
Yeah.
Because obviously you saw it as being a bit bigger than, you saw it as being a massive overarching, thing that will define it, but actually it's
around pockets of data.
It helps to guide maybe and support rather than.
Yeah. And that, I think, now I found this was many, many years ago, and I've tried to search for it since, but there was an amazing article out there. I came from a very quantitative background, did a brain imaging master's, and then I went into run a randomized control trial. So I came to realist research, and it was like I'd literally been jumped at sea. I found a paper, and I cannot find it since, and it is a paper that explains the different types of theory within social science. And it was fantastic. And I have not been able to find it since. But at that point in the PhD, I'm probably talking like 2016, 2017, it was invaluable at helping me understand, because I could not understand how program theory differed from a CMOC initially, or how that differed from mid-range, or what mid-range was and how that differed from substantive. And then you bring in grand theory and what on earth is that? And all of those theoretical terms had really confused me, not coming from that kind of world. So if anyone else does, there is a paper out there that people have sent my way, and it's not that one. This was the one that really did go to town on the different types of theory in social science. And I just cannot find it. But anyway, like I said, there's lots of different avenues to finding mid-range theory, and it can be useful as a way of organizing the data, to help you organize it thematically, not necessarily thematic analysis as like Ron and Clark would do, but organize your data thematically to be able to help you understand how you can start to then construct your CMOCs. So Alejandro's got his hand up. Have you used substantive theory?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm trying to think particularly of I'm not sure if everyone has heard of the Booth and Carroll Behemoth approach. So that's another way that you can potentially look at theory. I'll put the DOI on the chat. And essentially it's just one way that you can, that systematically they show how you can look to theories to inform, and even though it's for systematic reviews, the paper, I mean, Andrew Booth has done a lot of realist work, and you can potentially use some of these ideas as well to look for mid-range theories that are specific to your study topic. So I thought of that.
Hope that helps, Claire. We're always here to try and give over the top tips. But anyway, I think I might have someone at the door. The dogs have just started to go bonkers. I think someone's come home. Suzanne, thank you so much for that. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, you're welcome.